Hey guys, this is Patrick. So today I want to show you a game I played against International Master Eric Rosen. So I saw it was last week, last Friday, so a week ago from today. So I saw he was playing. It was the yearly classical arena on, or maybe the Shield on lichess. And I thought, oh, maybe I could play, but then I saw that Eric Rosen was in the list waiting to be paired or waiting for the tournament to start, and I knew my rating was about close to his, so I decided to register about 30 seconds before the start of the tournament, and I think he was number 9 and I was number 10, and then someone else registered, and then I was no longer next to him, but then the tournament started and I was paired with Eric Rosen, and so of course, going into it, I wasn't expecting to win, but still quite a chance to play against an international master and to play against Eric Rosen, who's a famous streamer, YouTuber. He streams on Twitch. So, so I'll show you the game. It was a 20 plus 10 time control, so 20 minutes to start, and then 10-second increment per move. And I was black this game. So he started with, and as you can see, okay, so the time is actually going to be shown here, just if it's of any interest to you. Then our names, our ratings. And so he opened with d4, and I played my normal move, knight f6, and here, usually if, for instance, if white plays c4, I play c5, so let me show you. So if white plays c4, usually I play c5, and then if white plays d5, I play b5, the Banco Gambit. Here I should have known, but Eric Rosen plays the London, so he played the London. And here's the thing, I played the London as white, but as black, I don't have a good record against it. I don't think so anyway. So I spent, I don't know how long, but I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out what to play instead. Uh, you know, the thing is, as black against d4, when I end up playing d5 and c6 somehow, and then I end up playing e6, this bishop is blocked in, white will end up playing queen to b3, and I always end up losing these games, so I spent some amount of time, so about a minute, trying to decide what to play, and here we're going to end up transposing into, or close to a Queen's Indian. So I played b6 on my third move here, and eventually I'll play e6, probably develop both of my bishops on e7 and b7. Not planning on playing g6, so here I play b6. Yeah, and again, I could have tried d5, e3 would have been the normal London, and then bishop f5, but again, I would end up playing c6, e6, maybe white would end up playing either c3 or c4, and then queen to b3, and I struggle with these games, so I decided not to do it. I played b6. So here Eric played knight to f3, bishop b7, c4, so now I think after e6 we might have transposed into a Queen's Indian. I'm not sure, but this is a typical Queen's Indian structure. So e6, e3, bishop e7, maybe in the Nimzo fashion, bishop b5 check might have been possible, but I prefer bishop e7, just getting ready to castle. So for now we're just developing normally, it's only move 5 now. Bishop e7, so my opponent played knight to c3, and here, if I just play normally, for instance with castling, my opponent is going to play either bishop to d3 or queen to c2. So let's say bishop d3 or queen to c2 is the same thing. controlling e4, and next they might be able to push with e4. So I wanted to avoid this. So rather than, after knight e4, rather than playing castles, one possibility would be to try to prevent white from gaining control of e4, might be to play d5. But d5 has the drawback of blocking the b7 bishop. And I remember during the game I was also concerned with white opening up the c file and putting one of the major pieces on the c file, and eventually maybe getting knight b5 or knight here, probably not here, but knight here, or in any case just moving the knight away and having a major piece, and c7 is suddenly weak. So pieces would be aligned on the c7 square if I play d5 and invite my opponent to open up the c file. Because he would get the half-open c file and I wouldn't. So his side of the c file would be open and my side wouldn't be. So that was the other drawback besides blocking in my own bishop. So rather than playing d5 in an attempt to control e4, here I don't remember what's the expression. I mechanically prevented e4 by occupying the square. That was the word I was looking for. Mechanically preventing e4. So I played knight to e4 myself before white gets a chance to either control the square or to advance. And so here, if white takes, I'll just take back with the bishop, and I'm still occupying e4. So after knight to e4, my opponent played queen to c2, so once again attacking e4, and now my knight is attacked, so he's threatening knight takes, and then bishop takes and queen takes, and I've lost a piece. So here I could go back, but then he could push now. So rather than going back, I played f5 to try to support the knight. Of course, again, I could have played d5, but it's the same situation as before. First of all, I'm blocking in my own fianchettoed bishop on b7, but mostly I'm inviting him to take and get pressure on c7, which is hard to defend. And I'm not even castled yet. You know, bishop could come, especially if I put a knight here, then I'm being pinned. So rather than supporting the knight with d5, I played f5. And this later on, if I castle, I could get a rook here and maybe do some sort of rook lift. Alright, so here I played f5 and my opponent continued with bishop to d3, again attacking e4. And so here, again, I could go back, and I'm not sure if I recall why I didn't go back. Oh yeah, because again, I think here, does e4 work? It's defended 3 times, it's attacked 3 times, so I think that should work. And so here, rather than retreating, I captured on c3. And here, you know, my opponent can still castle either kingside or queenside. He hasn't touched his pawns very much yet, except for c4. So queenside castling isn't as good, maybe. But here, the point being, if he decides to take with the b pawn, and you know, thinking he's going to get some action on the b file, the thing is, with this pawn structure on the b file, it might be a little bit difficult to get action, even with a rook on the b file. Maybe his hope would be to try to take advantage of the pin here on the bishop, but not too promising. And so he's got to play with the isolated pawn, doubled c-pawns. So here my opponent tried to play it a little bit more slowly and play queen takes c3, which is probably the best move. And so here I you know, have some time to decide what I want to do. One thing I'm noticing straight away is king and queen are aligned, so my bishop, if I had a knight here or here, or if I had a pawn here, then bishop here would win the queen. But of course that's not possible right now, so I could try to set it up right away with knight to c6. Well, that's one possibility, but I should probably castle first. Uh, Yeah, and then I could also consider messing up his king side with bishop takes f3, but getting rid of this bishop for this knight might not be, at least not immediately, required. And then let's say if I do play it and he captures back, then going kingside, I've given him the g file to play with and to attack me along the g file. So yeah, so I decided not to take, and I just castled here. And here my opponent started showing his plan rather than castling, which it could be normal. For instance, if white castles here, now I could try to take and mess up his king side, or otherwise this piece, the bishop on b7, is going to be there for a little while, and it's going to exert pressure on his king. So he decided not to castle kingside and instead played h4, trying to get pressure on the king. So now a knight to g5 might be possible. Here actually even bishop to g5 might be interesting for him, getting rid of this bishop. Because if you notice, I'm controlling the light squares with the bishop and the pawns, but this bishop, the dark squared bishop, is taking care both of the holes around my king side for the dark squares, but also it's the piece that's going to threaten to pin the queen to the king. So h4 could be also considering bishop to g5 to try to get rid of my bishop, which my opponent has not played it in the game, but I think he should have considered it, and I'll point it out again in a couple of moves. Right, so here Eric played h4, and I decided to play knight to c6. So I'm obviously threatening a pin, so to win the queen, and so my opponent has to react to this. For now I'm blocking the bishop, but the alternative knight to a6, first of all, it blocks in the a-pawn, which I do push later on in the game. It does leave the bishop open, but also the knight here is a little bit farther away from the center. For instance, after let's say white plays a3, which Eric did end up playing in the game, now this knight is just trapped for now. The only move would be to go back. So here I played knight to c6, developing, threatening bishop to b4, pinning the queen, and also controlling some dark squares in the center. So here Eric has a couple of options. Oh, let me show you again. Rather than knight to c3, now one move that, because now white has played h4, I do have some pressure on h4, and the h4 pawn is defended twice, attacked twice with the queen and bishop, and defended twice. But the thing is, in this position, I could have decided to remove one of the defenders of the h-pawn and win the pawn. So for example, here, instead of playing knight to c6, I could have decided to play bishop takes f3, g takes f3, and then bishop takes h4, winning the pawn. Now the thing is, at this point, I've opened up both the G file and the H file. My king has already committed to the king side, so my opponent is going to get both the G and the H files to play with. My opponent has not committed to king side castling, so he could castle queen side, and I'm stuck with the open files on my side of my king for the price of a pawn. So I've won a pawn, but came at a cost. So here, for example, my opponent could castle queenside and give me another pawn. but then the bishop is far away and not well defended. So for example, after rook to h2, my only safe move to save the bishop would be to go back, and here my opponent would just be ready to double up on the h-file, and suddenly I have to move this bishop. Maybe I could try g5, but it looks very dubious. At some point he could even open up this diagonal for his queen. And so here, let's just say I move back, then I'm just losing the pawn. And I think, this is resignable. I've lost the bishop, both files are open. I've lost the h-pawn. So this is why I decided not to go with the with winning the pawn here. Of course I saw it. It's not a good pawn. I'm opening both files here, and yeah, and I'm losing the b7 bishop. So that's a bit much for a pawn. So here I play knight to c6, and again I'm threatening to pin. And this is one instance where white and white never played this, and I don't know if he thought about this, but one option would have been to play bishop to g5 here and to trade the bishops. And he might even, if I do take, he could even open up the h-file for his rook. The point being here, it's kind of defending against the pin, because if I play this, he's winning the pawn, the queen, my queen as well. And here, for instance, we could get a series of trades, and it's hard to evaluate, but he's got some weaknesses here on the pawns. It's a queenless game now. I've lost my dark squared bishop, so I've got some holes here that are difficult to control, maybe. And so that was one possibility. I still think maybe not here, but at some point, maybe earlier, he should have considered trying to neutralize this bishop, which is taking care of all the dark squares on my around my center and king side, and it's also the bishop that's going to be threatening to win the queen. But here my opponent, rather than defending this way against the threat of winning the queen, so again, we just looked at bishop to g4 or g5. One possibility is for white to simply castle queenside or kingside, but queenside is probably best at this point after playing h4 and with the bishop eyeing the king side. So here, I could still play this move. I guess I probably wouldn't. Otherwise, the knight could jump in. Here, of course, I'm threatening a fork with the knight. So if he wants to keep the bishop, otherwise just king to b1. Yeah, actually, king to b1 is not possible here because I would take and then pin. So yeah, so actually after knight here, the only move would be bishop to b1. Or yeah, okay, so he could maybe defend it with a queen move, but I guess I understand his point now of playing a3. So he's preventing both bishop and knight at the same time, so I guess it's a good move. Now the one drawback though from his point of view is that he's further weakened the side where he's probably going to go, queen side. Alright, so now, okay, so he's defended against the threat with a3. Yeah, so here it's kind of difficult to figure out what to do. Looking at it now, maybe at some point playing in the center. But here I tried to push on the queen side, and maybe eventually, because now he's created a hole here on b3, maybe eventually. So now, first of all, oh yeah, now I remember, the point of a5 was to prevent b4. But actually, a5 is also preparing a4 and the maneuver knight to a5 to b3. Take advantage of the hole that he's got on b3, so he's pushed the c pawn, now he's just pushed the a pawn, and suddenly there's a hole on b3. So a5 is preparing to take advantage of this, as well as preventing b4. And here my opponent castled. So it looks, you know, he's going to be attacking me on the king side. So for example, here that would be taking care of the pawn. If the pawn moves, this diagonal becomes hairy. If I let him take, then the g-file becomes open. So he's going to be attacking me on the king side very quickly. And I was starting to feel a little bit worried about the continuation. The one thing to notice, though, is that his own king side, the queen side, has been very much weakened by pawn move. So for instance, there's a hole here. There's quite a few pieces he's got around his king, so it's not too bad yet. But here I decided to play a4 and still planning on heading to b3 with the knight. Here's the thing, though. It was kind of a, you know, I noticed there was a hole on b3. His king is there. Getting a knight on b3 would be very nice. And my knight does get there eventually. But here's the thing. Let's imagine that I've got a knight on b3 and he plays king to b1, and suddenly I have a knight on b3 and he's got a king on b1, and this knight is not going anywhere. Maybe I've got some action here. So again, let's imagine a knight here, and he plays king to b1, and I don't have much going on. So maybe I've got this bishop attacking, but I'm going to need to do something else in order to attack his king. So I played a4, maybe preparing a knight to a5 and then to b3. Again, knowing that king b1 pretty much takes care of things. But here Eric played queen to c2. So queen to c2, first of all, is aligning with my diagonal. So g4 is going to come quickly, and it's going to be painful. And I think it's going to be a pretty quick loss for me if I don't move quickly. And yeah, so again, now trying to decide what to do, because here I can play knight to a4, and again, if I play knight to b3 check, he plays king to b1, and I'm not sure where this is going. I need to open some files on the queen side. So here I was considering knight here, and then queen takes. I saw this, of course, it would have been a sacrifice of a pawn. Opening up the a file and maybe even taking advantage of the fact that I still have got this bishop. But here maybe queen to c2 even. And there's not much going on. And actually, even after knight here takes, there's no way for me to get to b3 anymore. So even this plan is out the window. So it's only the a file, and I'm not sure how to take advantage of this immediately. And so here instead I played, which is objectively a blunder, you know, if you ask Stockfish, or even Eric. But here I was trying to figure out a way to maintain this pawn on a5 to get my knight on b3, at least, to get a piece deep in his position. And so what's one way to defend the a pawn very naturally? It's just with b5. So b5 is supporting the pawn. I'm actually preparing knight to a5 to b3 in this position. Of course, I didn't get there because my opponent played c takes b5. And now, for instance, after knight here, my opponent could still take. He didn't play this. But here, let's just look. So b5 again. The plan is, first of all, to open files around his king. Now I'm opening up probably the b file, maybe the c file. But technically, I'm only defending the a pawn, trying to prepare knight to a5 to b3. So it's kind of it's a complete blunder. Stockfish doesn't like it. So let's look at, again, Eric took it, but let's see at the other options. They're both pretty good for black. So if white pushes, then probably just b5. And now, the drawback of having pushed a pawn really shows. Now I'm attacking it. So I'm going to open up the b file for myself. This pawn might be able to move at some point. And then the other option besides taking is to just play something else. For instance, rook d to g1, preparing g4 to attack me on the king. And again, I could take and open up the b file, kind of distract the bishop. Let's say I do this, but now he's attacking. Oh no, he's not attacking the pawn because he's defending. Anyway, the point being, this pawn is currently pinned. But here, if he decides to just ignore it and play rook d to g1, maybe just again b4, attacking the a pawn, opening up the b file. And so here, after b5, which is just a free pawn, and actually I'm giving quite a few pawns in this way, Eric made the right decision and took it. So here I played not very many moves. My knight is attacked here, so it needs to move, and not very many moves are open. So I played knight to a5, and again, I could be preparing knight to b3 check. At least I would get a piece deep in his position. But here, you may have noticed, and this was the drawback, when I played b5, I knew I was sacrificing this pawn. I also saw that after knight to a5, white could take the a pawn, and I still thought at least I'm getting open files here towards this king, because his plan is going to come quickly. His attack on my king is going to come quickly, so I need to be moving fast, which is why I played b5 here. What I did miss, though, after knight a5 is he's got the move either, I guess he could take with the queen, but he's got bishop takes c7, which is what Eric played in the game. And here I was just about getting ready to resign. So bishop takes c7, and the real problem is after queen to e8. First of all, I'm moving the queen away from his king. Now I'm on the king side. But the main problem with this, and again I missed this, was that white can take the knight. And now I'm just, I don't have any pieces towards this king. I'm going to take here, and black or white could play queen to c2, for example. He doesn't even need to. I didn't see queen to c2 during the game. But if he takes, if he takes here, I was getting ready to resign. Again, I would get to keep this pawn, but he's got to pass b pawn. This rook looks silly now, and I don't have a knight attacking the king. I don't have much, actually, attacking the king, and his plan is going to come fast. He needs to take care of the bishop first, but yeah. So after bishop takes c7, queen e8, and that would have been game over, I think. But my opponent didn't play it here. Oh, by the way, one reason why I didn't play queen to c8 is, I think that's the Stockfish recommended move, but for example, after bishop takes, I'll get a trade of queens whether I want it or not. Now I need to either take back the bishop, and at this point he can get a queen trade, and he's up a pawn, passed pawn, protected for now by the bishop. Or I do the trade myself, and this is just as bad. So, he's got a pawn here. No more queens, but he's up a pawn. So actually he might be up a couple of pawns now. Yeah, he's up a couple of pawns because he won c7 as well. So, being up 2 pawns in an endgame against an international master, may as well just resign. So here after bishop takes c7, I was getting ready to resign. Yeah, so if my opponent had played after queen to e8, bishop takes a5, I think that would have been game over. But here Eric, I think, started to become a little bit after b5, which is, a very surprising move, objectively a mistake, but I think he started to let's play b, dictated by me rather than him. So what you'll see for the rest of the game is we've played only on the queen side, on the right side of the board, and his plan on the king side, so with the two rooks, g4, rook g, some sort of trades, whatever, his attack on my king never materialized. He's completely left the king side alone from this point on after b5. So b5 a mistake, yes, but practically it worked out for me. So here bishop takes c7, which is a mistake I completely missed. Again, queen e8, bishop takes h5 is over, or bishop takes a5 is game over. But here he took another pawn, so now he's taken a third pawn. And do I have any interesting discoveries with the knight? Because now he's aligned his queen with the rook. Of course, a knight check, he just takes it. Knight here, he just takes it. And yeah, so this looks bad. I think here you could leave it, or maybe take the rook. No, not take the rook, because I take back with the bishop. But here you could maybe try this. So now he's one apiece, so I probably should be taking, and now he's going to be queening a pawn. And or maybe this doesn't work because I can get the queen out of the way. Maybe here. Alright, so anyway, complicated variation, knight to c6. That's not what I played here. I once again, so yeah, so first of all, my knight is attacked. Because now, and now I can just take back. So earlier, if you recall, here, if he takes back, if he takes the knight, I can take it. I can at least win the piece back. I'm not losing a piece. But here, now he is threatening to be taking the knight, and I can't take back as the queen is now on a4. And so here, for 1 second, I froze the bishop, so the bishop can't move anymore. So it's not attacking the knight because it's pinned. Oops. It's pinned to the king. Now, truth be told, I was still planning on resigning at this point. I'm down 3 pawns. The only thing white had to do was to find the move queen to c2, which is where the queen came from. So after queen to c8 pinning the queen, the bishop, the best move would have been queen to c2. Just going back and breaking the pin, and now he's again threatening to take the knight with the bishop and force a trade of queens, because I need a moment to take back the piece. The knight is trapped here, if you notice. After queen to c2, yeah, the knight is trapped. So yeah, so this would have been game over. Yeah, so after queen to c2, I do remember thinking I was going to resign. But he did not play queen to c2. Instead, he defended the bishop with b6. So it's got some sense in that he's pushing the passed pawn. Now it's on my 3rd rank. It's only 2 moves away from queening. He's also opening up a diagonal for what it's worth. Yeah, but the bishop is still pinned. The queen is kind of on the edge of the board, out of the action. Here I played a very strong bishop to d5, and I'm again threatening knight b3 check, except that this time knight b3 check would win the queen. So if you imagine white going ahead with the plan of attacking on the king side, and here if I can get knight to b3 check, now, whereas earlier the queen was on c2, now it's on a4, and so I can just take the queen next move. And so maybe white would play, I don't know what he would play actually, but he might solve the problem this way. And now, of course, it's completely winning for me. So bishop to d5, new threat. Knight to b3 check, which I had been planning for probably 5 moves. But now white has got a problem because he didn't play queen to c2. He maintained the queen on a4. Oops. Sorry about that. Maintained the queen on a4. Now I'm threatening to win the queen with knight to b3 check. And so here, again, the best move is queen to c2. So here, for instance, knight to b3 check doesn't do anything. I'm not attacking any queen. He can just play king to b1. And yeah, so this looks bad. I'm down 3 pawns. He's got a passed b pawn on b6. But here, instead of queen to c2, and notice also, if he does play queen to c2, now knight to b3 we just looked at is not very good. Bishop b3 instead, so the bishop instead of the knight. Now that's already better. He would have to move the queen, let's say queen to c3 or anywhere. And I could win the exchange, I guess, but and here even king takes is fine. So technically I've won back in exchange, but he's got 3 passed pawns on the queen side. This knight is out of play. I can probably play knight to c6 next, but yeah, against an international master, this is not worth it. Yeah. And again, his pieces are still active on the king side if he decides to do it, but at this point he's probably better off just trying to win on the queen side. Okay, so queen c2 would have been losing, and again, I wouldn't even have played this move, winning the exchange, because I did see this during the game. Winning the exchange doesn't lead to much, or actually even with queen to c2, either I would have resigned or tried to maintain an attack, because now I've got quite a few pieces around the king. So I wouldn't have traded this bishop for a useless rook here. I would have tried to continue to attack. Probably I would have just resigned here. But my opponent didn't play queen back. Instead, Eric played king to b1. And so here, after king to b1, and here, yeah, you guys can see the time, so we spent quite a bit of time. This is move 18, so it's not very deep in the game, but things have progressed quite quickly after my my move b5. And so here my opponent played a mistake, Eric played a mistake, king to b1. This is allowing me to trap the queen with knight to b3. Maybe he had seen bishop b3, but this is the same difference as before. Take the rook, he can take back, and yeah, I've won an exchange back, but my opponent has got 3 passed pawns on the queen side, and now I've lost an attacker, the light squared bishop. So this would not have been good winning the exchange. Instead, now my knight does jump into b3, which is what I played in the game, and now I'm attacking the queen, and if you notice, the queen doesn't have very many moves. It's run out of squares, which is why, one of the reasons why queen to c2 at some point would have been useful. Oops. Okay, so now I'm attacking the queen. My opponent played the only square available to him, queen to b5, to save the queen, but here, rook a5, supported by the knight, attacking the queen, and now the queen is trapped. So I'm at least winning the queen for a rook here. Again, in exchange for 3 pawns. So it's just a very uneven, weird game. So here I'm going to be winning the queen. Now I'm attacking the queen, and there's no squares. You know, this is controlled by the bishop, this is defended. Of course, I've got a pawn. So here Eric played knight to e5. So it's getting close to my king. It's not attacking my king quite yet. It is having pressure on d7 though. And so here, of course, after knight to e5, I took the queen, he took back, and now he's got some good pressure on d7. Alright, so now I've just won Eric's queen, and for a rook and 3 pawns. Now I'm down 3 pawns. Again, notice he's got 3 passed pawns. This is still the case. I've got a knight deep in his position. It's a very odd game. I've got a queen, he's got 2 rooks. I've got only the 1 rook, and now he's attacking d7. And I spent, so if you look at the time here, I've got 5 minutes left. Eric has got 2 minutes left. And now he's attacking d7. And it's very hard to defend, so I spent a couple of minutes trying to defend, or trying to figure out the best way to defend d7. You know, for example, bishop to c6 doesn't work, you can just take it twice. I don't know which way, maybe with the bishop first, I'm not sure. Now he's attacking, you know. This just loses yet another pawn, so I can't defend with the bishop c6 here. What else have we got here? You know, I could put in bishop takes g2, and throughout the rest of the game, bishop takes g2 is a possible move, but I've never ended up playing it. Here, Eric could just play bishop takes d7, and actually even my pawn on e6 is going to fall. And with it, maybe even the knight. So, yeah, so bishop takes g2, not an option. And then d6, I recall seeing this during the game, but after this might be, I should probably check with Stockfish, but this could be the best move, d6, I'm not sure. Here I was looking at, you know, white even has knight to c6, but knight to d7 is attacking the rook. Now the knight is trapped there though, it can't go back. So that's one danger. He's got the b8 square, I guess, supported by the bishop. But here the rook is attacked, and the thing that I did see was almost anywhere my rook moves is either it's going to be attacked or it's going to be exposed to discovered attack by the bishop. So for example, this square is covered, this square is covered by the knight. The only move I've got is rook f7. Yeah. So bishop here doesn't work. Bishop takes g2 is just a big mistake. d6 might have worked, I'm not sure. And again, if you guys check with Stockfish, let me know. What else? g6. Okay, yeah, so here I spent at least 2 minutes, I'm not sure, trying to figure out, because I knew I was ahead. You know, I understand it's completely unbalanced. My opponent has got 3 passed pawns on the queen side, but I've got a queen for a rook. And so technically I'm ahead in material. Also, I've got a bunch of attacking pieces close to the king, and now the pieces around his king are starting to be more and more rare. Maybe the rook, maybe the bishop. This bishop is far from getting back into the action. It's blocked in by the pawn. So I spent a few minutes, I'm not sure, we'll check after this move, I spent a few minutes trying to decide what to do, how to win this, because I knew I was ahead, but I had 5 minutes left against Eric Rosen and IM, who's, you know, by any means much stronger than me. And so here, both for the increment and having given up on trying to find an appropriate defense to d7, I decided to try to force a draw with bishop to e4 check. Here, you know, now bishop e4, I'm covering these squares, so the only available move to the king is king to a2. Now I should note he can try to block the check, for example with bishop to d3, but here I would just be very happy to take, let's say he takes back with the knight, or with the rook. Now, it's true I need to protect the knight, but the point is there's no more attack on d7. And so this would probably be good for me. It is starting to feel a little bit loose. Now he could align with the queen. See, it's just a very difficult position to play, especially against an IM. And so, yeah. So here I don't know what would have happened if my opponent had played bishop to d3. That's not what Eric played. Eric played king to a2. And here, of course, I was very happy to play bishop d5 back. And again, I've got 3 minutes left, so I spent about 2 minutes here trying to find a way to defend against d7. And at some point I gave up and tried to force a draw. Here, I'm aligning the bishop with the king, so I could be getting discovered checks. And so here I was expecting king back, And bishop check, try to offer a draw by threefold repetition. Here again, white could try to offer a draw, to block the diagonal this way. I think this might even be worse than the... oh, actually the knight is trapped. So maybe this would have been an option. I missed this, and I guess Eric did too. So let's see. King... So here... Okay, yeah. So here we're saying maybe this move. Okay, so I don't have to take... I guess I can just go back. But here this looks bad. Yeah, this looks difficult for black. Especially against someone of Eric's caliber. So maybe that was his best plan, was to try to make me win this game, because I think I would have struggled to win. I know I'm probably winning, but it's hard to do. And again, the point being, if I take, this knight is trapped. As far as I can see, there's no way for me to defend it. If I try to attack his piece, he can just take, and he's defending. So I've lost the knight here. I have a check, he can still maintain defense. It's complicated. I don't think that would have been a good move, so I think here I would have been better off just retreating. Let him mess up my pawn. At least d7 is safe. So yeah. So we were looking here after so I played the bishop check, he went up with his king, I realigned the bishop with the king, and here we were just looking at trying to block the diagonal rather than taking the threefold repetition with king to b1. So my opponent, Eric, played king to b1, and of course I went back. And again, earlier we looked at bishop here. So my opponent played king to e2, bishop d5. Here I could have offered a draw. If white decided to play king to b1, that's a draw. That's a threefold repetition. And I still have bishop check here. That's still a threefold repetition. But here, Eric did probably consider the fact that I had trouble winning this position. And, he could have tried another way, as I said. He could have tried with bishop here earlier, bishop here earlier. But here, he just decided to forget about this, my two pieces attacking the king. And he attacked my queen, won a pawn. So he played bishop takes d7. So he did win a pawn. And again, the b-pawn might be dangerous. He's got pressure on e6 now, which is going to come with check. And I think his point was, I can't capture anything except for the d4 pawn, which comes with check. But let's say after this move, now I have to retreat. This knight is attacked, but also my queen is attacked, so I'm probably going to end up losing my knight. But here, so here Eric played bishop takes d7. Here I don't have to take this pawn. I don't have to play some weird check. I can just play knight to c5 check. So again, this is a discovered check, and I'm retreating the knight, but now I'm going to defend d7 this way, and with the discovered check, the knight going from b3 to c5 to d7. And now Eric, this was a huge blunder. Eric losing a piece here for a pawn. So he played king a1, knight takes d7. Here he could have tried, I'm not sure why he took, maybe he should have tried to keep more pieces, because now he's down material, but here he just traded more pieces, queen takes d7. And so here this is completely winning, and now I was no longer going to take a draw. Now his king is pretty much lonely. This bishop is not doing much because it's blocked in. And next I could be getting ready to bring the queen, maybe sacrifice. Here I could also consider bringing the queen to do a battery with the bishop, threatening mate. And so Eric played a simple blunder, so he took the pawn on d7. He should have probably gone for the draw. And here, maybe a counterintuitive move, the knight goes back, but here I take on d7. And so here it's just completely lost. Actually, he's got 11 seconds left. So here, my opponent tried to maybe kick away the bishop, maybe defend g2. It's completely lost for white at this point. So I played rook a8. Here I was trying to decide between queen to b5 and rook a8. Queen to b5, planning on maybe double up. But here, for example, let's say white defends this way, maybe with this move or this move. I'm not sure where I'm going. Even if I do get a queen check, it's just the bishop and the queen attacking. Maybe this bishop can sacrifice at some point. I wasn't sure. Maybe queen b5 is winning. But here I decided this rook is not doing anything, so I played rook a8. I could be threatening some sort of sacrifice at this point, because for example, if you imagine bishop takes a3, pawn takes a3, rook takes a3, this is check. Let's say the king attacks the rook, and now I have a check or a check here, and the queen is going to come too at some point, and I'm going to get queen, rook, and bishop attacking the king with no more shelter, and it's going to be made in a couple of moves. So after I threatened to sack here, Eric played rook to d3, defending, and he sacrifices on a3. And here I played queen to b5. Here this comes with an attack on the rook. I can't play this move. I could threaten mate with queen here. And so Eric defended both with rook to c3, but this allowed me to infiltrate this way. And the point of queen to e2 is now I'm again threatening a sacrifice on a3, because as soon as this pawn moves, I'm going to mate him on a2. And so here, you know, I've got 4 pieces attacking. He's got the one defender. He's going to bring another rook here in this move, so he played rook hc1. And here I spent quite a few minutes, almost all of my time if I recall correctly, trying to decide between which sacrifice to make. Again, you can't take twice, because as soon as the pawn goes, I'm going to mate him on e2. And so here I was just trying to decide between bishop takes a3 and rook takes a3. Now the nice thing for me also, not that it matters, but he doesn't even have a check because of his own bishop blocking, and this will prove later. So in any case, I was trying to decide between bishop takes and rook takes. I played, what did I play? Okay, so I played, again, between two, I played rook takes a3, and this is why I spent, I don't remember, almost 2 minutes trying to decide, because here technically I'm sacrificing a rook, so before you do it, better make sure it's not a blunder. And here he took, and I took back with the bishop, and here again, now we see it, he can't take the piece, because I would just mate him on a2. So here, Eric didn't play it. I'm still threatening mate though. I'm attacking b2. So here I'm threatening queen takes b2 mate. And there's only one way for white to defend. He doesn't even have a check. He has rook to b1. And here there's a bunch of moves. I think the best move Stockfish says is queen to c2. It doesn't matter, anything wins. Here I played bishop to b4. Here I'm threatening mate because I'm controlling the square. There's not very many ways to defend. Eric played rook to c1 so that when I do play this, he's got the escape square. King to b1. Of course, this still leads to mate. For example, I would probably play bishop to b3. And with the bishops controlling the squares, I think queen to a2 will be mate. But here, after rook to c1, again, trying to make a square for the king, I simply played bishop to b3. And so now I'm again threatening checkmate. And now there's no defense. Eric played b7 at last, pushing the passed pawn, but here he just needs to block mate, and yeah. So here I played queen a2, 37th move, and so I beat Eric Rosen, international master, in a 20 plus 10 classical game in the yearly classical, or the Shield, I don't recall exactly. If we go back, so let's just recap a little bit this game, because it was a very wild game. So here again, I played the Queen's Indian, b6, bishop b7, here occupied the e4 square mechanically, so prevented e4 by occupying the square. And here I could be threatening tactic at some point. Here again, I still think at some point after having played h4, bishop to g5 would have been interesting for Eric. Try to get rid of this bishop. Take advantage of the fact that all of my pawns are controlling the light squares but not the dark squares. Okay, taking space on the queen side, and here a4, and here the weird move, just defending a5 or a4, preparing knight a5 to b3. So the pawn sacrificed b5, which is just a blunder. And here he took it, took c7, and here he took a third pawn rather than simply playing bishop takes a5. That's game over. But he took a third pawn. I brought back my queen to the king. Again, queen c2 was the best defense. Getting the queen out of the action of the rook, and also breaking the pin on the king for the bishop. And this would again have been game over, but here b6, and here developing the bishop, threatening knight check. Here again, the best move was to bring back the queen, but he didn't. He got out of check, of the knight check, but still knight to b3, even though it doesn't come with check. And here I won the queen. So if we go back, started all with b5, a bunch of pawns losing, didn't take. He didn't retreat, didn't get out of the dangerous tension with the rook, which is, you know, something that you should do if you've got a queen aligned with a rook. Get out of the way if you can. Now would have been a good moment. And yeah, so I won the queen here. Here I offered a draw because I couldn't figure out a way. And of course I was kind of scared because I knew I was going to mess this up. So here I offered a threefold repetition, and he just played an elementary blunder, losing to a discovered check. And the rest of the game is just 4 pieces attacking. Yeah. So this is how I won against international master Eric Rosen. b5, probably the key move. Notice also something I mentioned earlier is he had all this beautiful plan, this beautiful setup on the king side, getting ready to attack, taking advantage of my move f5, which weakens the king, and now whatever happens, something is going to open up around the king. And he had all the activity and I didn't. And I played b5, and suddenly Eric shifted his attention to the queen side, which I don't think he should have done. And for the rest of the game, the king side was untouched. And of course I was lucky. Eric didn't play the best moves all times, but and again, the king side is just simply left untouched for the rest of the game. So b5 truly, it's a blunder, but it did work in this game. So yeah, this was quite a long video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave comments, please do. Let me know what you think. If you find variations I didn't point out, do mention it in the comments. And I hope you did enjoy. You know, I don't generally post videos like this, but I you know, a win in a classical game against a international master, I don't think is going to happen to me very often. So yeah, so I was very happy with this game. I hope you guys enjoyed, and don't, as always, don't hesitate to get in touch. Lichess YouTube, don't be shy. So in the meantime, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.